Hey folks, welcome back to the farm. Today we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into how we turn these into these. Stick around and I'll show you the whole process. Good evening folks. It's about 10 o'clock at night, but I thought while I'm doing the eggs and doing the rounds and the lockup, I thought I'd give you a bit of more in-depth chat through how we do all the eggs, what the process is, and hopefully end up with some fluffy chicks by the end of the video. So the bit you've just missed is me going around all the pens, all the coops and houses that we've got around the place and collecting the eggs. And I just use these plastic egg flats, and this is about 2 days worth. We collect them all up, we sort through. If I think any of them are too small, then we don't hatch those. We can eat those or discard them. And anything else, if they're really soiled, we might get rid of them or damaged. But we basically go through, we label them all up. We put everything in the incubator every week, so it doesn't really need dates or anything put on them. If you're selling them, you might want to do that to keep on top of it. But everything goes in, providing it's less than a couple of weeks old, it's got a good chance of hatching. Ours are always under a week old. Now the incubator we're using is this unit here, which is called an Over Easy. It's made by Brinsea. Brinsea are based in Bristol, Western-super-Mare Way. I've always used these products. We've got everything from an old poly hatch through to this and like little octagon from years ago. I had one of these about 20 years ago when they first started coming out, and then I stupidly sold it, and then here I am buying another one. Really, we need to be upgrading this next year to get probably one that's double the depth, which basically doubles the eggs, so we can have 2 trays on each level. So not the best lights in here, but you can see that there's 3 racks here and a pre-programmed time and duration during the day. These will turn. So for us, we've got it pretty much on default, but if you were doing different species or waterfowl or something like that, you might need to change that. But for us, we're pretty much standard. So we run it at the normal kind of 37.5 degrees. And this is the water bath at the top. So you put your water in here because as well as heat, you need humidity when it comes to incubation. Take everything I say with a pinch of salt. I'm no expert, but I have been doing this for, like I said, 20 years. And I've hatched out thousands of chicks, ducklings, peafowl, pheasants, everything you can think of, quail. And this is kind of just a basic overview. So basically we have our 3, what works for us is we put, because we hatch every week, we've got one level here. After a week that goes down, the new rack goes in, and by the time it gets to the bottom one, for chickens and bantams this is, then they can go into a separate hatcher. If you just have this unit, you can put the eggs right down the bottom there, and at that point they're just on the base and they're no longer turning. It's probably a fraction cooler down there, which is fine. But the only difference is you need more humidity. And I won't go into a science of it, but when you get an egg, it's got an air sac at one end, and as the incubation process goes through the 3 weeks, that air sac gets larger as the egg loses moisture just through the shell. And you need that air sac in there. Now, as well as that happening, you also, getting to the tail end of the incubation for the last 3 days or so, you need to get the humidity right, and it needs to be slightly higher. So that's why I was saying that it's not necessarily ideal to hatch in here, because you might have eggs going at the same time, and therefore you don't want too much humidity, because if you have too much humidity, the air sac isn't able to grow like it should do. So the humidity is normally around 50 or so for the most of the time, but when you come to hatching you might need it to be around 70. Therefore bring in the granddaddy of incubators, which is this, which is called a poly hatch. It is just simply an insulated box. There is no fan in it or anything, there's just there's sort of a wire heater cable in there. That warms it up. There is natural convection that happens in there, and interestingly your temperature reading on the thermometer is higher because you're measuring at a certain height, and therefore the inside of the egg is going to be a slightly lower temperature, So in this one it's 39.2 degrees on the thermometer, and that gives you the right temperature for the egg. Now, just to confuse things further, put these eggs somewhere safe. That's not very safe. Just confusing so that you can use this for automatic turning as well. It's got a plate in the bottom of there, which hasn't been cleaned out yet, which has got a motor, separate plug, and that moves back and forth. And by putting these bars in between the eggs, that forces the eggs to roll slightly. So that just goes back and forth at a constant rate by the peg turning around. Now that works fine. Millions of eggs have probably been hatched in these machines, and there's no problem with it. But this capacity and just the ease of it tends to be the way people go now. Something that turns more automatically like that. But this machine is great for hatching. So I'm now doing the weekly check. I've taken a tray of eggs out. Normally we do this at the weekend, but I'm filming now, so I'll do it now. We're going to take the tray out. This has been in a week, and therefore we need to check to see if there are any babbies on the way. And this may or may not show up well on camera. Now when you candle an egg, that is, as it sounds, you're putting a candle behind the shell so you can see through it, and I imagine that was done with a candle once upon a time. But we have the luxury of bulbs, so this is an LED that just shines through. But it keeps getting left on, so I may not use this, and I may use my trusty old phone because that light is probably brighter and works just fine. Alright, you've got a bit of light, but not too much light. I really don't think it's got a battery. Definitely hasn't got enough. If you're using it, if you want to use your phone, make sure it's right up to the max. And then we're just going to put the fat end of the egg onto it and illuminate what's inside. You're not going to be able to see anything, are you? Let's turn all the lights off. Now, it's absolutely fine for these eggs to be out for a duration. You know, chickens go off and have their dinner and scratch around a bit, so the core temperature of these eggs isn't going to change. So we've got plenty of time, and we're going to start by just putting the light through the end. And you'll find that some eggs are easier than others. This has got a bit of dappling and stuff going on the shell, so it makes it harder. And you probably won't be able to see that there is an embryo in there with some veins. So we'll put that one down, find an easier one. So that's a good one, we'll keep that. We're basically just looking for empties at this point. And the first thing you'll see if you're checking early after about 3 or 4 days is you'll see a red spider shape, which is basically the tiny embryo with the veins coming out afterwards. So again, and if you hold it nice and still, you'll actually see, even after just 10 days, you'll start to see the embryo moving around and kicking. So I'm going to go through these now. Oh man, this is tight. How do we fit them all in here? The nice thing with this one is I can just bop it on the end, and now I know what I'm looking at. See there, you probably can't see again. So we've got embryo in there. The light isn't transmitting through. As soon as I go on that one, the whole egg glows, which basically means she's empty. So you can see bright, you can see the yellow yolk rolling around in there. So that's a duff one. We put that to one side. Fertile, fertile. The air sac is a bit of a giveaway. So that one in there might be a head empty if I can get to it. That's a big empty there. Again, clear. No, that's fine, that's good. So you can lie the eggs down in an incubator, or in this case we're incubating vertically, which basically means we're standing the eggs up with a pointy end down, and that still incubates absolutely fine because they're still turning side to side, and therefore we can fit more in per tray. Now if I start finding a few infertile ones like this, obviously we want to check to see what they are, see if we've got any problems. So that's a black pekin. The previous one was a black pekin. Now they are a new group that we've got, but they are a little bit fancy pants, and they've got very, very feathered feet, and they might just need a little bit of trimming. Right, so that's over halfway. Good so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 eggs that weren't fertile. However, we have had some chicks hatch out of that batch, so I'm not too concerned. I've got more concerns about our Brahmas, which are our great big giants, because they're simply the least fertile chickens on the farm. So far we've put 30 eggs through the incubator and we've had 2 eggs fertile. One's hatched and one's next week. Right, so we've got those. We're going to have a quick look in here. Now this tray here, which is one of the standard trays, I'll show you in the light. They have movable dividers, so you can change the eggs to whatever size you want, the gaps for whatever size you want. These eggs are going to hatch this weekend, so they're further developed, and you won't be able to see much in these because nearly all of it is taken up by the chick. And that's the air sac within the egg. So we need that air sac to grow a little bit more to make sure there's plenty of space for the chick to tap into and then start chipping its way out. But they're looking fine, so we should be expecting, what's that, 7 times 4, 20, there's about 35 eggs in there, which should be hatching on Sunday. For a change, we didn't put anything in this week, so we are having a week off. That's simply because someone bought a load of fertile eggs and we had a few less eggs, so we just went for a bumper week next week, which is why I've got loads to fit in, but that's okay. These are going to be moved down on Sunday. Well, actually they can be down there. So as it's now pitch black outside, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to move you to some hatching time, because I've already filmed a couple of weeks ago me moving the eggs into here. So we take them out of the trays that are in here, we lie them out onto the kind of hatching area plate in here, put some bars in so they don't rattle around too much, because as soon as the chicks start hatching they'll disturb the other eggs, there'll be eggs rolling everywhere and it makes it harder for the chicks to hatch. So I put some dividers in, just low dividers, and then gradually they'll hatch. Maybe halfway through I'll fish out a few of the shells, maybe some of the fluffy chicks, and put them into the brooder, but most of the time I try and leave everything in here for at least 24 hours. And as you can see in this time lapse, they really do pop out. It's like a little popcorn machine, we call it. So as the chicks are emerging from the shells, they gradually dry off and fluff up. That also increases by all the chicks hatching. The humidity tends to go up a little bit as well. We already have some water in the bath at the bottom of this machine, which keeps the humidity where it needs to be, and we monitor that. But majority of the time it's kind of left to its own devices. We fill up both little trays in there and leave it. There are holes on top of the incubator that if it's not quite humid enough, you can block those holes, and vice versa. You can uncover them if you feel you need to. So at that point you start seeing more and more fluff, and hopefully by day 21, 21 and a half ish, you end up with all your chicks hatched. There'll always be 2 or 3 or a few percent of unhatched chicks. For some reason they will have not broken into the air sac, or they might not have had the energy to get through the shell, and that can be for all sorts of things. It might be genetics, it might be a weak chick, a small egg, or any variables, but hopefully you want to get as many of them to hatch on their own without any intervention as possible. As soon as you start breaking a shell, you don't help it, you normally end up killing the chick, because the chick needs to absorb the yolk, and it also needs to absorb all the little blood vessels in that egg before it hatches. If you try and start peeling it out thinking you're doing the right thing by helping it, often it can bleed to death because those blood vessels are still open to the chick, and that does happen. So it's best, if it's going to make it out, it's probably going to make it out on its own. The only time something might help is if the membrane is shrunk around it a little bit, and you can dampen it and peel it off a little bit, but you don't really want to be breaking into a shell. It's pretty much a no-no. Well, it's the day of the hatch. They were all starting to pop out yesterday, but now is the time to see if our one single Brahma has hatched. And the big egg, I left the time lapse running, but the big egg was right in the middle. I can't see it whole, which means it's either been boosted out of the way by the little ones, or it's there somewhere. So he should be about twice the size of all the others. Can't see him. But then again, I can't see the egg.
Yeah, the egg is hatched. So where is he? He should be silver. Oh well, at least he's hatched. There's quite a few more pipping there, so I'm going to leave that. Sold a bunch of chicks yesterday, so we should have enough space in this brooder. If not, I'll start another one. Give you a quick update. Don't know if I had this duckling pen built last week. Of course, offcuts out of the build. These are 4 that have been reserved for this week, so they're ones that won't need heat anymore. And then all of this week's hatch are, well, they just got wet because they just obsessed with water because they're ducks. So they're throwing themselves around down there, even though it's just a drinker. So I've just lowered that lamp because the worst thing is damp ducklings. When you've got ducklings with a mum, they have that waxy layer on them because they're always rubbing up on the mum, who is waterproof. Whereas when you hand rear ducklings that are incubated and brooded like this, they're not waterproof. So you must make sure they get dry if they get wet, otherwise that's when it goes downhill quick. That said, if you do have a little bit of water, they will jump on it and swim around, which looks very cute, but you can see that they just get bedraggled. So they need to dry out. It's one of the most important things is, you know, keeping ducklings dry. These are temporarily come in just while I sort out some pens. They're in here for about 2 days. Now I've kind of started splitting up groups. So this is going to be a breeding group of white silkies, which look lovely. And I came around yesterday and trimmed up all their faces and the bums so that they can see a bit better and hopefully mate a bit better. They're not laying yet anyway, but I'm just going to leave them in here for another day until I get a nice pen built for them, just because they are less durable out in the weather. And Broody Mum is doing well with her chicks. They spend most of their time jumping up on her back. I might try and get them outside as well. There you go. And funny enough, most of those chicks are reserved. People who don't want them as sort of day olds. So I said I'd keep these ones on for those people, just because I should be able to sex them after that, after they're done with Mum. We're back. This is actually jumping back in time to the eggs we candled that second batch. They're slightly smaller. I actually had someone who had a failed incubator or a broody that left the nest and had kids expecting eggs to hatch this weekend. And so he came up yesterday with an incubator plugged in his camper van. Anyway, he took 12 just about to hatch eggs. Thankfully, they all started hatching last night, so hopefully all went to plan. So that's why there's a few less in here than normal. But all being well, we'll open this up now. I'm going to transfer them over to here. Rather than putting in straight onto shavings, I prefer to use either corrugated card like this or a towel or a puppy pad, something that, one, that they've got a bit of grip and it's not too slippy, but also fine with wood shavings, they don't know what food is yet, so they can start pecking and eating stuff that they shouldn't. So going on something like this, it means their feet have got something to grip into, a towel or a tea towel or something just as good. And that's going to avoid them getting splayed legs, because when they start slipping, we don't want that, because that's just a pain to sort out. So we set these on a Sunday evening. It's Sunday evening now, so they tend to hatch the night before, certainly with the bantams. So we're going to move these over and see what we're left with. So there's a few Millefleur. These are all pecans, I think. Oh, hang on, no, maybe not. No, that's a Wyandotte. No furry eggs. So that's our first Wyandotte from my new pen. These are lemon cuckoo. So this is just the colouring of the bantam rather than the breed. They're all the furry legs are going to be pecans. The gold partridge. So I'm just going to move them all across before I get the heat on them. That's a Millefleur, so they're the ones that end up with a nice speckled look. And the partridge. And then it was the blacks that weren't being as fertile as they should, but we've got 2 there, and these are a very, very high quality pen of birds, so they're going to be ones that we keep. So none of those are pipped, but I will stick the candle on them quickly just to check what's going on there. But let's get these guys nice and warm. There's still a good
20 or so chicks there. So straight in with the contact brooder. So nice low voltage option. No need for a big heat lamp in your head. It's a bit big for this box, but they don't need any food or water tonight. We'll sort all that out in the morning. We just want to get them out, a bit more space. I'll probably just put a little bit of water in this corner. All right, didn't get a chance to clean that, but they can't go on top anyway. This week's chicks learned to hop up on top. So I've wound that right down. They don't need much space to get under there. If you imagine it was a broody hen, they would just sneak under. You want it so their backs are just in contact with the brooder, which is about right. I'll keep an eye on them. Well, I'll talk about a long edit. This was filmed, I think, 8 weeks ago. So since then, well, it's been a whole load more eggs, a whole load more chicks. So time for an update and show you how the circle of egg life starts all over again, keeps going around. And we've got a whole shed full of chicks. These ones hatched yesterday. A mixed bantams in there. All just learning to use the brooder. And then we'll be moving them out. Well, I'll do it now actually. So in here, our Polish are now laying. So our Polish are now laying really well. Some Wyandottes, the rest are all Pekins, and a Silky here. Silkies have just started breeding and laying well now. So these birds in here are just about to be moved into the bigger pen. So these are the ones you probably would have seen hatching. Some Wyandottes, bit of a mishmash in there. And then moving through the pens, we got the 2 and 3 week olds in here. I've just moved them to a heat lamp just so it's a bit higher. Catches all the birds. A couple of Brahma in there. The rest are all bantams. Now, as I move them on each week, if any are just a little bit small, then I hold them back a week. So some of those in there should be in here, but they're just a little bit smaller. We find that especially with, well, certain colours like these lemons don't grow as well. So normally I hold a couple of those back. And then by this age, they're pretty much able to be sexed. So we've got quite a few going today. People who just want a few to raise on themselves. So obviously if you buy them at this age, you can tell they're girls, but also you can still get them nice and friendly because you can grow them on for a couple of months before they start laying. So I hope that was of use to some of you. It doesn't matter whether you're incubating half a dozen in a tiny little incubator or even under a broody hen, or if you're doing 1,000 at a time. Similar sort of principles. So it's just a matter of scale, and we're actually maxed out with our incubator now. We're producing far too many eggs from our breeding pens. So it may be that we have to look at getting a larger machine or a double or 2 machines to keep going. We are hatching still, the birds are still laying well, and we've just put another 200 in. So all being well, there'll be more to update you on. If you want to know any more about anything that's going on, then let me know. There's more kind of infrastructure down in the field now where all the pens are and the breeding groups, so we can share that with you as well. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.